Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Live at 5. I am your host, curator Kevin Adkisson with the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research. And today I have decided to brave the cold and snow in solidarity with my friends and family in New York and New England. I wish we had that much snow, but we are out in the cold in what used to be known as Frisbee Valley at the edge of Suicide Hill, two names that I don't think are used very much anymore. And so I am beside Kingswood Lake, across from Kingswood and below the valley of Cranbrook House. And those of you who know the campus intimately might take a guess as to why I am here. And we are here to celebrate and to learn about these 39 boulders, which are the sculpture commonly known as Snake Rock, but whose official title is Lucifer's Landing, Real Snake in an Imaginary Garden. And we come out to Lucifer's Landing today to learn a little bit about the great minimalist sculptor and anthropologist Richard Nonas. And Richard is a sculptor who's been practicing for over 50 years. He completed this piece at Cranbrook in 1989. And we can see the head of the snake here. And when he discussed the making of this piece, he really only sort of chose the snake head and the snake rattles. And then the 30 some odd boulders in the middle are there as sort of just as they came from the shipment. Now, I've been thinking a lot about the rocks around Cranbrook for the last couple of days as I was invited to be a critic in the architecture student studios. And there was a student, Ryan, who did a piece on Cranbrook's rocks. But in fact, these are actually not Cranbrook rocks. These are from Oakland County. They're from Clarkston, Michigan. And they were trucked in as part of a movement in the 1970s and 1980s to transform Cranbrook's 300 and some odd acres of property into an outdoor sculpture park. And so we all know and love the Carl Millis sculptures that are around the art museum and close to the works of architecture. But it was the idea of Cranbrook's longtime head of sculpture from the 70s through the 2000s, Michael Hall, to turn the entire campus into a sculpture park. And so he invited artists like Alice Aycock and Mark de Suvru, Dennis Oppenheim, and others to come onto campus in about 1978, 79, and they did these large sort of wooden constructions. Richard Nonas's piece comes a decade later when he's invited to bring his own sensibility and minimalist sculpture aesthetic to campus. And Nonas came to campus and he was really enchanted by both the property, the place, and the architecture. And he thought of this work of art as being, and in his words, an itch that Eliel Saarinen can't scratch. And so he builds it it is, it's kind of in the middle of campus, not especially near buildings. So you see Cranbrook School for Girls over there on the horizon across the lake. And we see Cranbrook House up the hill here. But then Saarinen's itch in his side is in this valley. And Nonas wanted us to see the piece and sort of wonder, is that natural? Is that there? Is it ancient? Is it modern? And he was interested because Eliel Saarinen had actually grown up in his part of Finland very close to a prehistoric Finnish earthwork. And so Nonas wanted this to sort of feel as if it could be a very ancient sort of prehistoric thing. Perhaps it's fully natural. And when he titled it Lucifer's Landing, Real Snake in Imaginary Garden, he wanted to imply this sort of tension, I guess, between is it man-made, is it not man-made, is it man or is it nature, or is it sort of nature expressing itself even before mankind. It does look like some sort of man has been here and added a little temporary addition to one of the 39 boulders. Now, the piece overall was assembled in 1989 by the sculptor and 20 students at Cranbrook Academy of Art who helped him assemble the snake rock. And I'll climb up the hill a bit so you can see it from above. And one thing that Nonas was interested in was how the piece would change as you walked around it. And so he wanted something that maybe at first glance you don't even notice it because it just looks like a rock. But as you keep walking through the landscape, you begin to sort of question how the piece is changing and how exactly it got there. Again, I'm a curator of our architecture and historic collections, not of our contemporary art. So if you're groaning as I tell you about this, thinking that I've totally missed the point of the sculpture, well, comment below, and we will learn about minimalist sculpture together. Now, the piece, it was assembled in 1989, and then in 1999, a very interesting thing happened, which was Cranbrook was doing some landscape work, and they had the bulldozer out here, and somehow a message got misdelivered, and the rocks that were supposed to be moved on campus ended up becoming the snake rock rocks. And so the entire piece was actually destroyed, and it was a pretty significant error to eliminate a work in the Cranbrook collection. And so in 1999, in February of that year, the piece had to be reconstructed from photographs. And so the snake had to be reassembled. And it sort of went against the entire process of the artwork, which was the sort of labor of the students rolling and placing and the artist sort of being one with the land and the sort of Stonehenge-like beauty of the sort of perfect creation to then take it all out with a bulldozer and then use the bulldozer to put it all back together. So that's the sort of secret of Snake Rock, is that its process was deeply corrupted a decade in. What I love about Snake Rock is that even it's I think that, you know, in a lot of ways, looking at it through Instagram Live with me explaining it to you and telling you about it sort of defeats the purpose of the entire minimalist sculpture, which is that you're meant to come across it in the landscape as if it is this sort of prehistoric change in the landscape, and you are supposed to be sort of questioning why it's there, how it got there, and then engaging with it. And I think in that part it is extremely successful, because as you sort of walk through the woods and hills and valleys, you end up coming across it. And so as you move through the trails, and I see this happening every time I'm over here in the nicer weather, you really have to go and jump from rock to rock. And it is perfectly proportioned, intentionally or not, to sort of jump across it. And I believe that even at the lower school, Brookside School, the elementary kids, they actually take field trips where they come over and they jump from rock to rock. So it does have this sort of like, what is that? And I need to go and interact with it, which is one of my favorite parts of the piece. Now, a little bit more about the artist, Richard Nonas. He is a graduate, or he studied anthropology at the University of Michigan, and he has a background in archaeology. And so he was working in anthropology and archaeology before he was working in sculpture. And he's worked in New York for the last 50 years. Now, this piece was a gift to Cranbrook from the Cranbrook Academy of Art Women's Committee, and as well as the Gilbert and Lila Silverstein family. And when it is not covered in snow, it is out here in the meadow, surrounded by sort of occasionally trimmed grass, and it is nice to watch the piece over the season as the landscape around it changes and it becomes more or less invisible in the height of summer with the tallest grasses, and then the grass will be mowed and it will become visible again in time for the students to come back and leap from rock to rock. I don't know if anyone has any questions about Snake Rock, or if you have anything else that you would like me to discuss about this little piece. I would demonstrate jumping from rock to rock, but I'm not sure that is the wisest thing to do with snow-covered bean boots. So instead, I will just walk a little bit further out and let us get a larger view. I did mention those other sculptors who built pieces in the woods and in the sort of those other pieces that were built in the woods. Sadly, they have all been destroyed. So most of our collection of outdoor sculptures from Michael Hall's campaign to turn the campus into a sculpture garden have not survived. And I think the most tragic loss in my mind, just knowing these pieces from black and white photos, was the Marc de Subaru that used to be right here, which was a train trestle swing set with a huge tire swing. That was pretty wonderful down here in the valley. And then a nice view of Cranbrook House up on the hill. So I'm trying to make these Live at Fives to be focused and to just be about one piece at a time. So that's it for this Tuesday. If you have other places that you want me to go, other works of art that you want me to go and talk about, do send them to me in a message or an email. And just a reminder that we are in the midst of our History of American Architecture lecture series. Last night, I talked about the great Detroit architect Minoru Yamasaki and the Philadelphian Louis Kahn, as well as the New York architect and environmental artist James Wines, who has a sort of similar interest in land art as Mr. Nonas here. And we were joined by James Wines on the Zoom lecture, which was quite exciting. Next Monday at 11 a.m. and 7 p.m., the series continues with the third lecture, which will be about postmodernist architects Aldo Rossi, Stanley Tigerman, and John Haydock, who all visited and lectured at Cranbrook between 1979 and 1985. It's not too late to sign up for the series. Your tickets to it support me, and they support the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research. And if you buy a ticket now, I can send you the link to the first two lectures that are now on our unlisted YouTube. Thanks so much for coming along for another Live at 5. I will be back next Tuesday on Instagram Live, and I will be here tomorrow on the Facebook Live at 5. And no, we're not going to address Suicide Hill. It gets that name from the sledding season that would take place there. I don't have my sled, though there were some kids sledding on the other hill when I walked down here. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I will see you next Tuesday, if not before, for another Live at 5. And when the weather warms up, I expect to see you all jumping from rock to rock here at Snake Rock. Thanks for watching.